Hi friends. I have missed you over vacation, and you know I've been missing you since the quarantine, but even more over vacation because I couldn't Zoom with you or talk to you. Um, as I told you, I'm going to record my read alouds so that you can watch them anytime you want, and it doesn't have to be at a time when you can't be there. So I'm grateful that many children's publishers have given teachers permission to record their books. Normally that would be against copyright, but they've given us permission because so many of us are learning from home. So just like you asked, I'm going to read Wonder because so many of you asked for it. I know some of you have read it but still want to hear it, which is great. It's a long book, so I'm going to try to read a couple chapters. We'll see if I run out of steam. Please be patient with me because I've never recorded myself. I'm not crazy about the idea, but I'm going to do it because you asked. So, as you know, Wonder is written by R.J. Palacio, and the publisher is Knopf. And I'll go ahead and get started. I know some of you have read it, but some books are so wonderful we can hear them again and again. Chapter 1, Ordinary. I know I'm not an ordinary 10-year-old kid. I mean, sure, I do all the ordinary things. I eat ice cream, I ride my bike, I play ball, I have an Xbox. Stuff like that makes me ordinary, I guess. And I feel ordinary inside. But I know ordinary kids don't make other ordinary kids run away screaming in playgrounds. I know ordinary kids don't get stared at wherever they go. If I found a magic lamp and I could have just one wish, I would wish that I had a normal face that no one ever noticed at all. I would wish that I could walk down the street without people seeing me and then doing that look away thing. Here's what I think. The only reason I'm not ordinary is that no one sees me that way. But I'm kind of used to how I look by now. I know how to pretend I don't see the faces people make. We've all gotten pretty good at that sort of thing. Mom and Dad, Via. Actually, I take that back. Via's not so good at it. She can get really annoyed when people do something rude. Like, for instance, one time in the playground, some older kids made some noises. I don't even know what the noises were exactly, because I didn't hear them myself. But Via heard, and she just started yelling at the kids. That's the way she is. But I'm not that way. Via doesn't see me as ordinary. She says she does. But if I were ordinary, she wouldn't feel she needs to protect me as much. Mom and Dad didn't see me as ordinary don't see me as ordinary either. They see me as extraordinary. I think the only person in the world who realizes how ordinary I am is me. My name is August, by the way. I won't describe what I look like. Whatever you're thinking, it's probably worse. Why I didn't go to school. Next week, I start 5th grade. Since I've never been to real school before, I am pretty much totally and completely petrified. People think I haven't gone to school because of the way I look, but it's not that. It's because of all the surgeries I've had, 27 since I was born. The bigger ones happened before I was even 4 years old, so I don't remember those. But I've had 2 or 3 surgeries every year since then, some big, some small. And because I'm little for my age and I have some other medical mysteries that doctors haven't really figured out, I used to get sick a lot. That's why my parents decided it was better if I didn't go to school. I'm much stronger now. Though, the last surgery I had was 8 months ago. I probably won't have to have any more for a couple of years. Mom homeschools me. She used to be a children's book illustrator. She draws really great fairies and mermaids. Her boy stuff isn't so hot though. She once tried to draw me a Darth Vader, but it ended up looking like some weird mushroom-shaped robot. I haven't seen her draw anything in a long time. I think she's too busy taking care of me and Via. I can't say I always wanted to go to school because that wouldn't be exactly true. What I wanted was to go to school, but only if I could be like every other kid going to school, having lots of friends and hang out after school and stuff like that. I have a few really good friends now. Christopher is my best friend, followed by Zachary and Alex. We've known each other since we were babies, and since they've always known me the way I am, they're used to me. When we were little, we used to have play dates all the time, but then Christopher moved to Bridgeport in Connecticut. That's more than an hour away from where I live in North River Heights, which is at the top tip of Manhattan, and Zachary and Alex started going to school. It's funny, even though Christopher's the one who moved far away, I still see him more than I see Zachary and Alex. They have all these new friends now. If we bump into each other on the street, they're still nice to me though. They always say hello. I have other friends too, but not as good as Christopher and Zach and Alex were. For instance, Zach and Alex always invited me to their birthday parties when we were little, but Joel and Eamon and Gabe never did. Emma invited me once, but I haven't seen her in a long time. And of course, I always go to Christopher's birthday. Maybe I'm making too big a deal about birthday parties. These chapters are very short. The next one is How I Came to Life. I like when Mom tells this story because it makes me laugh so much. It's not funny in the way a joke is funny, but when Mom tells it, Via and I just start cracking up. So when I was in my mom's stomach, no one had any idea I would come out looking the way I did. Mom had had Via 4 years before, and that had been such a walk in the park, that's Mom's expression, that there was no reason to run any special tests. About 2 months before I was born, the doctors realized there was something wrong with my face, but they didn't think it was going to be bad. They told Mom and Dad I had a cleft palate and some other stuff going on. They called it small anomalies. Your palate is the bone on the roof of your mouth, and sometimes it doesn't come together right in the middle, and it's very easily fixed. There were 2 nurses in the delivery room the night I was born. One was very nice and sweet. The other one, Mom said, did not seem at all nice and sweet. She had very big arms, and here comes the funny part. She kept farting, like she'd bring Mom some ice chips and then fart. She'd check Mom's blood pressure and then fart. Mom says it was unbelievable because the nurse never even said, "Excuse me." Meanwhile, Mom's regular doctor wasn't on duty that night. So Mom got stuck with this cranky kid doctor she and Dad nicknamed Doogie after some old TV show or something. They didn't actually call him that to his face, but Mom says that even though everyone in the room was kind of grumpy, Dad kept making her laugh all night long. When I came out of Mom's stomach, she said the whole room got very quiet. Mom didn't even get a chance to look at me because the nice nurse immediately rushed me out of the room. Dad was in such a hurry to follow her that he dropped the video camera, which broke into a million pieces. And then Mom got very upset and tried to get out of bed to see where they were going. But the farting nurse put her very big arms on Mom to keep her down in the bed. They were practically fighting because Mom was hysterical and the farting nurse was yelling at her to stay calm. And then they both started screaming for the doctor. But guess what? He had fainted right on the floor. So when the farting nurse saw that he had fainted, She started pushing him with her foot to get him to wake up, yelling at him the whole time. "What kind of doctor are you? What kind of doctor are you? Get up, get up!" And then, all of a sudden, she let out the biggest, loudest, smelliest fart in the history of farts. Mom thinks it was actually the fart that finally woke the doctor up. Anyway, when Mom tells this story, she acts out all the parts, including the farting noises. And it is so, so, so funny. Mom says the farting nurse turned out to be a very nice woman. She stayed with Mom the whole time, didn't leave her side even after Dad came back and the doctors told them how sick I was. Mom remembers exactly what the nurse whispered in her ear when the doctor told her that I probably wouldn't live through the night. "Everyone born of God overcometh the world." And the next day, after I'd lived through the night, it was that nurse who held Mom's hand when they brought her to meet me for the first time. Mom says by then they had told her all about me. She had been preparing herself for the seeing of me, but she says that when she looked down into my tiny, mushed up face for the first time, all she could see was how pretty my eyes were. Mom is beautiful, by the way, and Dad is handsome. Via is pretty, in case you are wondering. Christopher's house. I was really bummed when Christopher moved away 3 years ago. We were both around 7 then. We used to spend hours playing with our Star Wars action figures and dueling with our lightsabers. I miss that. Last spring, we drove over to Christopher's house in Bridgeport, Maine. Me and Christopher were looking for snacks in the kitchen, and I heard Mom talking to Lisa, Christopher's mom, about my going to school in the fall. I had never, ever heard her mention school before. "What are you talking about?" I said. Mom looked surprised. She hadn't meant for me to hear that. "You should tell him what you've been thinking, Isabel," Dad said. He was on the other side of the living room talking to Christopher's dad. "We should talk about this later," said Mom. "No, I want to know what you're talking about," I answered. "Don't you think you're ready for school, Augie?" Mom said. "No," I said. "I don't either," said Dad. "Then that's it. Case closed," I said, shrugging, and I sat in her lap like I was a baby. "I just think you need to learn more than I can teach you," Mom said. "I mean, come on, Augie, you know how bad I am at fractions." "What school?" I said. I already felt like crying. "Beecher Prep, right by us." "Wow, that's a great school, Augie," said Lisa, patting my knee. "Why not Via's school?" I said. "That's too big," Mom answered. "I don't think that would be a good fit for you." "I don't want to," I said. I admit, I made my voice sound a little babyish. "I don't want to." "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do," said Dad, coming over and lifting me out of Mom's lap. He carried me over to sit on his lap on the other side of the sofa. "We won't make you do anything you don't want to do." "But it would be good for him, Nate," Mom said. "Not if he doesn't want to," answered Dad, looking at me. "Not if he's not ready." I saw Mom look at Lisa, who reached over and squeezed her hand. "You guys will figure it out," she said to Mom. "You always have." "Let's just talk about it later," said Mom. I could tell she and Dad were going to get in a fight about it. I wanted Dad to win the fight, though a part of me knew Mom was right. And the truth is, she really was terrible at fractions. Driving. It was a long drive home. I fell asleep in the back seat like I always do, my head on Via's lap like she was my pillow. A towel wrapped around the seatbelt so I wouldn't drool all over her. Via fell asleep too, and Mom and Dad talked quietly about grown-up things I don't care about. I don't know how long I was sleeping, but when I woke up, there was a full moon outside the car window. It was a purple night, and we were driving on a highway full of cars, and then I heard Mom and Dad talking about me. "We can't keep protecting him," Mom whispered to Dad, who was driving. We can't just pretend he's going to wake up tomorrow and this isn't going to be his reality, because it is, Nate, and we have to help him learn to deal with it. We can't just keep avoiding situations that... So sending him off to middle school like a lamb to the slaughter, Dad said angrily. But he didn't even finish his sentence because he saw me in the mirror looking up. What's a lamb to the slaughter? I said sleepily. Go back to sleep, Augie, Dad said softly. Everyone will stare at me at school, I said, suddenly crying. Honey, Mom said. She turned around in the front seat and put her hand on my head. You know, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. But we spoke to the principal there and told him about you, and he really wants to meet you. What did you tell him about me? How funny you are? How kind and smart? When I told him you read Dragon Rider when you were 6, he was like, wow, I have to meet this kid. Did you tell him anything else? I said. Mom smiled at me. Her smile kind of hugged me. I told him about all your surgeries and how brave you are, she said. So he knows what I look like? I asked. Well, we brought pictures from last summer in Montauk, Dad said. We showed him pictures of the whole family and that great shot of you holding that flounder on the boat. You were there too? I have to admit, I felt a little disappointed that he was a part of this. We both talked to him, yes, Dad said. He's a really nice man. You would like him, Mom added. Suddenly, it felt like they were on the same side. Wait, so when did you meet him? I said. He took us on a tour of the school last year, said Mom. Last year, I said. So you've been thinking about this for a whole year and you didn't tell me? We didn't even know if you'd get in, Augie, answered Mom. It's a very hard school to get into. There's a whole admissions process. I didn't see the point of telling you, having you get all worked up about it unnecessarily. But you're right, Augie. We should have told you when we found out last month that you got in, said Dad. In hindsight, said Mom. Yes, I guess. Did that lady who came to the house that time have anything to do with this, I said? The one that gave me that test? Yes, actually, said Mom, looking guilty. Yes. You told me it was an IQ test, I said. I know. Well, that was a white lie, she answered. It was a test you needed to take to get into the school. You did very well on it, by the way. So you lied, I said. A white lie, but yes, sorry, she said, trying to smile, but when I didn't smile back, she turned around in her seat and faced forward. What's a lamb to the slaughter, I said. Mom sighed and gave Daddy a look. I shouldn't have said that, Dad said, looking at me in the rearview mirror. It's not true. Here's the thing. Mommy and I love you so much. We want to protect you any way we can. It's just sometimes we want to do it in different ways. I don't want to go to school, I answered, folding my arms. It would be good for you, Augie, said Mom. Maybe I'll go next year, I answered, looking out the window. This year would be better, Augie, said Mom. You know why? Because you'll be going into 5th grade, and that's the first year of middle school for everyone. You won't be the only new kid. I'll be the only kid who looks like me, I said. I'm not going to say it won't be a big challenge for you, because you know better than that, she answered. But it'll be good for you, Augie. You'll make lots of friends, and you'll learn things you'll never learn with me. She turned in her seat again and looked at me. When we took the tour, you know what they had in the science lab? A baby chick that was just hatching out of its egg. It was so cute. Augie, it actually reminded me of you when you were a little baby with those big brown eyes of yours. I usually love when they talk about when I was a baby. Sometimes I want to curl up in a tiny little ball and let them hug me and kiss me all over. I miss being a baby, not knowing stuff. But I wasn't in the mood for that now. I don't want to go, I said. How about this? Can you at least meet Mr. Tushman before making up your mind, Mom said. Mr. Tushman, I said. He's the principal, answered Mom. Mr. Tushman? I repeated. I know, right? Dad answered, smiling, looking at me in the rearview mirror. Can you believe that name, Augie? I mean, who on earth would ever agree to have a name like Mr. Tushman? I smiled, even though I didn't want to let them see me smile. Dad was the one person in the world who could make me laugh no matter how much I didn't want to laugh. Dad always made everyone laugh. Augie, you know you should go to that school just so you can hear his name over the loudspeaker, Dad said excitedly. Can you imagine how funny that would be? Hello? Hello? Paging Mr. Tushman. He was using a fake high old lady voice. Hi, Mr. Tushman. I see you're running a little behind today. Did your car get rear-ended again? What a bum rap. I started laughing, not even because I thought he was being that funny, but because I wasn't in the mood to stay sad anymore. Could be worse, though, Dad continued in his normal voice. Mommy and I had a professor in college called Miss Butt. Mom was laughing now, too. Is that for real? I said. Roberta Butt, Mom answered, raising her hand as if to swear. Bobby Butt. She had huge cheeks, said Dad. Nate, said Mom. What? She had big cheeks is all I'm saying. Mom laughed and shook her head at the same time. Hey, I know, said Dad excitedly. Let's fix them up on a blind date. Can you imagine? Miss Butt, meet Mr. Tushman. Mr. Tushman, here's Miss Butt. They could get married and have a bunch of little tushies. Poor Mr. Tushman, answered Mom, shaking her head. Augie hasn't even met the man yet, Nate. Who's Mr. Tushman, Via said groggily. She had just woken up. He's the principal of my new school, I answered. Next chapter is called Paging Mr. Tushman. I would have been more nervous about meeting Mr. Tushman if I'd known I was going to be meeting some kids from the new school. But I didn't know, so if anything, I was kind of giggly. I couldn't stop thinking about all the jokes Daddy had made about Mr. Tushman's name. So when me and Mom arrived at Beecher Prep for a few weeks before the start of school, and I saw Mr. Tushman standing there waiting for us at the entrance, I started giggling right away. He didn't look at all like what I pictured, though. I guess I thought he would have a huge butt, but in fact, he didn't. In fact, he was a pretty normal guy, tall and thin, old but not really old. He seemed nice. He shook my mom's hand first. Hi, Mr. Tushman. It's so nice to see you again, said Mom. This is my son, August. Mr. Tushman looked right at me and smiled and nodded. He put his hand out for me to shake. Hi, August, he said totally normally. It's a pleasure to meet you. Hi, I said, dropping my hand into his hand while I looked down at his feet. He was wearing red Adidas sneakers. So, I said, kneeling down. He said, kneeling down in front of me so I couldn't look at his sneakers, but had to look at his face. Your mom and dad have told me a lot about you. Like, what have they told you? I asked. Sorry? Honey, you have to speak up, said Mom. Like what? I said, trying not to mumble. I admit I have a bad habit of mumbling. Well, that you like to read, said Mr. Tushman, and that you're a great artist. He had blue eyes with white eyelashes. And you're into science, right? Uh-huh, I said, nodding. We have a couple of great science electives at Beecher, he said. Maybe you'll take one of them. Uh-huh, I said, though I had no idea what an elective was. So are you ready to take a tour? You mean we're doing that now, I said. Did you think we were going to the movies, he answered, smiling as he stood up. You didn't tell me we were taking a tour, I said to Mom in my accusing voice. Augie, she started to say. It'll be fine, August, said Mr. Tushman, holding his hand out to me. I promise. I think he wanted me to take his hand, but I took Mom's instead. He smiled and started walking toward the entrance. Mommy gave my hand a little squeeze, though I don't know if it was an I love you squeeze or and I'm sorry squeeze. Probably a little of both. The only school I'd ever been inside before was Via's. When I went with Mom and Dad to watch Via sing in spring concerts and stuff like that. This school was very different. It was smaller, and it smelled like a hospital. Next chapter, Nice Mrs. Garcia. We followed Mr. Tushman down a few hallways. There weren't a lot of people around, and the few people who were there didn't seem to notice me at all, though they may have because that may have been because they didn't see me. I sort of hid behind Mom as I walked. I know that sounds kind of babyish of me, but I wasn't feeling very brave right then. We ended up in a small room with the words Office of the Middle School Director on the door. Inside there was a desk with a nice-seeming lady behind it. "This is Mrs. Garcia," said Mr. Tushman. The lady smiled at Mom and took off her glasses and got up out of her chair. My mother shook her hand and said, "Isabel Pullman, nice to meet you." "And this is August," Mr. Tushman said. Mom kind of stepped to the side a bit so I would move forward. Then that thing happened that I've seen happen a million times before. When I looked up at her, Mrs. Garcia's eyes dropped for a second. It was so fast, no one else would have noticed, since the rest of her face stayed exactly the same. She was smiling, a really shiny smile. "Such a pleasure to meet you, August," she said, holding out her hand for me to shake. "Hi," I said, quietly giving her my hand, but I didn't want to look at her face, so I kept staring at her glasses, which hung from a chain around her neck. "Wow, what a firm grip," said Mrs. Garcia. Her hand was really warm. "This kid's got a killer handshake," Mr. Tushman agreed, and everyone laughed above my head. "You can call me Mrs. G," Mrs. Garcia said. I think she was talking to me, but I was looking at all the stuff on her desk now. "That's what everyone calls me, Mrs. G. I forgot my combination, Mrs. G. I need a late pass, Mrs. G. I want to change my elective, Mrs. G." "Mrs. G is actually the one who runs the place," said Mr. Tushman, which again made all the grown-ups laugh. "I'm here every morning by 7:30, Mrs. Garcia continued, still looking at me while I stared at her brown sandals with small purple flowers on the buckles. "So if you ever need anything, August, I'm the one to ask. And you can ask me anything." "Okay," I mumbled. "Oh, look at that cute baby," Mom said, pointing to one of the photographs on Mrs. Garcia's bulletin board. "Is he yours?" "Oh, no, my goodness," Mrs. Garcia smiling a big smile that was totally different from her shiny smile. "You've just made my day. He's my grandson." "What a cutie," said Mom, shaking her head. "How old?" "In that picture, he was 5 months, I think, but he's big now, almost 8 years old." "Wow," said Mom, nodding and smiling. "Well, he is absolutely beautiful." "Thank you," said Mrs. Garcia, nodding like she was about to say something else about her grandson. But then all of a sudden her smile got a little smaller. "We're all going to take very good care of August," she said to Mom, and I saw her give Mom's hand a little squeeze. I looked at Mom's face, and that's when I realized she was just as nervous as I was. I guess I liked Mrs. Garcia when she wasn't wearing her shiny smile. Okay, I'm going to read one more, and that'll be about 23 pages. Jack, Will, Julian, and Charlotte. We followed Mr. Tushman into a small room across from Mrs. Garcia's desk. He was talking as he closed the door to his office and sat down behind his big desk, though I wasn't really paying much attention to what he was saying. I was looking around at all the things on his desk. Cool stuff, like a globe that floated in the air, and a Rubik's type cube made with little mirrors. I liked his office a lot. I liked that there were all these neat little drawings and paintings by students on the walls, framed like they were very important. Mom sat down in a chair in front of Mr. Tushman's desk, and even though there was another chair right next to hers, I decided to stand beside her. "Why do you have your own room and Mrs. G doesn't?" I said. You mean, why do I have an office? Asked Mr. Tushman. You said she runs the place, I said. Oh, well, I was kind of kidding. Mrs. G is my assistant. Mr. Tushman is the director of the middle school, Mom explained. Why do they call you Mr. T? I asked, which made him smile. Do you know who Mr. T is? He answered. I pity the fool, he said in a funny, tough voice like he was imitating someone. I had no idea what he was talking about. Anyway, no, Mr. Tushman, shaking his head. No one calls me Mr. T, though I have a feeling I'm called a lot of other things I don't know about. Let's face it, a name like mine is not easy to live with. You know what I mean? Here I have to admit, I totally laughed because I knew exactly what he meant. My mom and dad had a teacher called Miss Butt, I said. Augie, said Mom, but Mr. Tushman laughed. Now that's bad, said Mr. Tushman, shaking his head. I guess I shouldn't complain. Hey, so listen, August, here's what I thought we would do today. Is that a pumpkin? I said, pointing to a framed painting behind Mr. Tushman's desk. Augie, sweetie, don't interrupt, said Mom. You like it? Said Mr. Tushman, turning around and looking at the painting. I do too. And I thought it was a pumpkin too until the student who gave it to me explained that it's actually not a pumpkin. It is, are you ready for this? A portrait of me. Now, August, I ask you, do I really look that much like a pumpkin? No, I answered, though I was thinking yes. Something about the way his cheeks puffed out when he smiled made him look like a jack-o'-lantern. Just as I thought that, it occurred to me how funny that was. Cheeks, Mr. Tushman? And I started laughing a little. I shook my head and covered my mouth with my hand. Mr. Tushman smiled like he could read my mind. I was about to say something else, and then all of a sudden I heard other voices outside the kids' voices. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but my heart literally started beating like I'd just run the longest race in the world. The laughter I had inside me just poured out of me. The thing is, when I was little, I never minded meeting new kids because all kids I met were really little too. That's cool. What's cool about really little kids is that they don't say stuff to try to hurt your feelings, even though sometimes they do say stuff that hurts your feelings. They don't actually know what they're saying. Big kids, though, they know what they're saying, and that is definitely not fun for me. One of the reasons I grew my hair long last year was that I like how my bangs cover my eyes. It helps me block out the things I don't want to see. Mrs. Garcia knocked on the door and poked her head inside. They're here, Mr. Tushman, she said. Who's here? I said. Thanks, said Mr. Tushman and Mrs. Garcia. August, I thought it would be a good idea for you to meet some students who will be in your homeroom this year. I figure they could take you around the school a bit, show you the lay of the land, so to speak. I don't want to meet anyone, I said to Mom. Mr. Tushman was suddenly right in front of me, his hands on my shoulders. He leaned down and said very softly in my ear, It'll be okay, August. These are nice kids, I promise. You're going to be okay, Augie, Mom whispered with all her might. Before she could say anything else, Mr. Tushman opened the door to his office. Come on in, kids, he said, and in walked two boys and a girl. None of them looked over at me or Mom. They stood by the door looking straight at Mr. Tushman like their lives depended on it. Thanks so much for coming, guys, especially since school doesn't start for another month, said Mr. Tushman. Have you had a good summer? All of them nodded, but no one said anything. Great, great, said Mr. Tushman. So, guys, I wanted you to meet August, who's going to be a new student here this year. August, these guys have been students at Beecher Prep since kindergarten, though, of course, they were in the lower school building. But they know all the ins and outs of the middle school program. And since you're all in the same homeroom, I thought it would be nice if you got to know each other a little before school started, okay? So, kids, this is August. August, this is Jack Will. Jack Will looked at me and put out his hand. When I shook it, he kind of half smiled and said, hey, and looked down really fast. This is Julian, said Mr. Tushman. Hey, said Julian, and did the same exact thing as Jack Will. Took my hand, forced a smile, and looked down fast. And Charlotte, said Mr. Tushman. Charlotte had the blondest hair I've ever seen. She didn't shake my hand, but gave me a quick little wave and smiled. Hi, August. Nice to meet you, she said. Hi, I said, looking down. She was wearing bright green Crocs. So, said Mr. Tushman, putting his hands together in a kind of slow clap, what I thought you guys could do is take August on a little tour of our school. Maybe you could start on the 3rd floor. That's where your homeroom class is going to be, room 301, I think. Mrs. G is room 301, Mrs. Garcia called from the other room. Room 301, Mr. Tushman nodded. And then you can show August the science lab and the computer room. Then work your way down to the library and the performance space on the 2nd floor. Take him to the cafeteria, of course. Should we take him to the music room? Asked Julian. Good idea. Yes, said Mr. Tushman. August, do you play any instruments? No, I said. It wasn't my favorite subject on account of the fact that I don't really have ears. Well, I do, but they don't exactly look like normal ears. Well, you may enjoy seeing the music room anyway, said Mr. Tushman. We have a very nice selection of percussion instruments. August, you've been wanting to learn to play the drums, Mom said, trying to get me to look at her. But my eyes were covered by my bangs, and I stared at a piece of old gum that was stuck to the bottom of Mr. Tushman's desk. Great. Okay, so why don't you guys get going, said Mr. Tushman. Just be back here in, he looked at Mom. Half an hour, okay? I think Mom nodded. So is this okay with you, August? He asked me. I didn't answer. Is that okay, August? Mom repeated. I looked at her now. I wanted her to see how mad I was at her. But then I saw her face and just nodded. She seemed more scared than I was. The other kids had started out the door, so I followed them. See you soon, said Mom, her voice sounding a little higher than normal. I didn't answer her. So that's it, friends. That's the first 23 pages in Wonder, and I will be back with you for part 2, probably in a day or 2. Have a great day, evening, whatever it is in your world.